Hey there. We're so glad you're here. Stick around till the end. We'll share how you can be a part of the breakout.
The way that queer people have found a way to be free, no offense, but y'all should be looking up to us. You should be asking what we can teach you because we're free in ways that many people who are not like us could never imagine.
Trystan Reese is a dad to 3 great kids. He has a loving partner and a fulfilling career. It's a beautiful, somewhat typical life. But as a transgender man, there's nothing typical about how he got here.
Trystan's an author, speaker, trainer, and facilitator who uses personal storytelling in his advocacy work. How he grew his family from an unexpected adoption to his very public trans pregnancy is a huge part of how he connects with people on LGBTQ+ issues.
In this episode, Trystan takes us through that story and why it's so important for him to tell it. He shares why storytelling is a much more effective tool than arguing. And at a time when war has been declared on DE&I, Trystan tells us why there's still hope.
It's June, and we're celebrating Pride Month with the inspirational Trystan Reese. You're listening to The Breakout, a show about pushing back against expectations, against fear, and against that little voice telling you to stay small. I'm Dr. Carrie Ulrich.
And I'm Kelly Gunther. For over 25 years, Carrie and I have helped people make bold leaps, or just take that first, small, powerful step. On The Breakout, we show you that anyone can push back.
Because that's how we find our way forward. All right, Trystan, we're so happy you're here. I'm so delighted to see your face this morning. And in one sentence, what did you break out of?
As a transgender man, I broke out of the idea that there's just one way to be a man.
I love it. We have a whole chapter in our book about gender and expectations and breaking out of boxes. And to me, that's such a core one. I mean, that sets your stage for the rest of your life. So we're so happy you're here and talking about it. We need to hear more stories. What do you help others break out of?
I think same thing, not just necessarily around gender, but what sorts of rules or kind of pre-written maps they were thinking that they were supposed to go down and how to make that visible and then how to figure out what of it do you actually want to do and keep and then what of it can you kind of toss aside and blaze your own trail.
This is what we all needed this morning listening to you, because what are all these messages and the roadmaps that we're told we're supposed to be? And that's why we do love stories of transgender folks, because you really do question the core, right? The one that we're always beat into. You're either a boy or a girl, and here's the colors, and here's everything. And so it is very exciting to know that we can really question everything. And we just appreciate you being here and telling your story. And speaking of storytelling, this is what you do. This is your work. So tell us a story and tell us about how your personal experiences led you to the work that you do now.
Oh my goodness, that's a big question.
I know. Well, I started easy, but now it's the big one.
It is the big one. Well, I think a big part of the storytelling journey as well as just my life journey probably goes back to 2008. I was working at the National LGBTQ Task Force, and it was my job at that time to travel the country and help local communities who were facing anti-LGBT attacks at the ballot box. And for a long time in the LGBT movement, we sort of thought we have enough allies. We just have to turn them out, get them to the polls. And really what we learned in 2008 is that, homophobic and transphobic messages had continued to evolve so successfully that we kind of hit a ceiling in terms of the number of people that we could mobilize. And we realized oh no, we actually have to start changing some minds and getting more people on our side. And that was a huge shift. And really, we began testing for the first time, what does it take to actually change someone's mind on gay marriage, on transgender non-discrimination, on these types of issues? And is it possible? And if so, how? And how long does it take? And we started testing that work, persuasion work. And so I was part of that first team of people who started going, knocking on doors, finding people who were against gay marriage, who were, against trans non-discrimination protections, that kind of thing, and figure out ways to really, in an open and humble and curious way, solicit their stories, ask them about their lives, try to figure out what are their values and where is their overlap with mine. And then how can we in the community and our allies share our stories in a way that is compelling enough that someone actually can listen, can come with us on their own sort of transformation journey, and then come out of it with their opinion changed in a powerful and deep and longitudinal way.
Yeah.
And once I saw that happen, I realized, oh my gosh, basically anything is possible. And that was really the root of all the work I've done ever since.
Wow. So break it down for us, because I know some of us, it seems so obvious, like, duh, why don't you accept this? Like, why? So it's hard sometimes for me to have that conversation, because I'm like, why are you messing with people's lives? There's no reason. And so I even struggle. So how did you find this way to talk to people and change their minds and persuade them?
Yeah, well, it definitely wasn't just me.
I know it's a group.
And the work continues. But I think, number one, it's really about your mindset going in, to do your absolute best to come from a place of non-judgment, to really feel somatically, like in your cells, that this person is not stupid, this person is not hateful or bigoted, this person is you on a different path. It is very likely that had you been born into the family that they were born into, or the community they were born into, and the culture they were born into, if you had been inculcated with the same messages they had, you might believe what they believe as well. You might be as afraid of change as they are. You might be as afraid that your way of life, all the rules that you knew that have gotten you where you are, is going to come crumbling down, and you're going to be irrelevant and left behind. That's very scary, and to access empathy as much as possible and curiosity as much as possible. And I think it sounds like, would a mindset going in really make a difference? And the answer is absolutely, because people can feel in their bodies when you're setting them up. They can feel like, oh, you already think I'm bigoted, etc. So if you come in and just say, honestly, I would be interested to hear how you came to that conclusion. Tell me a little bit about why you don't think that gay people should get married, and be genuinely curious and interested, and then find points of connection. So if someone says, oh, I really wanted to have kids and a family, so that's why I got married. Oh, that's great to hear. I have 3 kids. And, actually, when we adopted our older 2 kids, my partner and I couldn't get married. And that made things really scary for us and pretty treacherous for our kids, who really needed and deserved a stable foundation to build a family from. It sounds like you share those same family values. Would you say that's true? Mm-hmm. Right? So I'm looking for, where is the overlap, as much as they see a gay transgender man, with tattoos and piercings standing on their doorstep, and they're like, I don't have anything in common with this dude. I'm like, ooh, I bet we do, though.
You do.
You do. I bet we do. And to find those points of commonality, so they feel like, again, I'm not judging them. And in fact, we have a lot in common. And from that foundation, we can start to challenge a little bit and start to say, I wonder if my partner and I had been able to get married and could better protect our adopted kids, 6 years ago when that happened, I wondered how your life may have changed for the worse. Mm-hmm. And it seems so obvious to you and to me and to people listening maybe, but many people have not done that empathy exercise.
Right.
It's theoretically something bad might happen. And when you really say, it's such a positive for me and my family, I'm curious how that might have impacted you negatively, right? I'm not telling them anything, and I'm not setting them up. It's not passive aggressive. How would it hurt you? Yeah. No. Genuinely, I would like to know, is this something you've thought about?
Yeah.
And I invite them into that sort of inquiry.
For Trystan to go to people and know that they don't believe in his way of life, and to talk to them, just to kind of be in that moment and be so empathic and really try to connect with them is just inspiring to listen to, because that is incredibly difficult work, incredibly difficult
I can't
work.
imagine the amount of maybe thoughts he had around, does this even make sense? Why am I even doing this?
That's tough. I mean, we do sales for our company, and it's 99 no's to get to one yes, but that isn't the core of who I am that they're saying no to. They're just saying no to my business, or they don't need us right now. But to invalidate who I am, I can't imagine.
But when you see the payoff in the individual people who are like, yeah, we can bond over something, it really does tug at the heartstrings, and it makes me admire him even more.
Trystan, tell me your secret, because intellectually, I absolutely understand empathy, but then in the moment, and I am not LGBTQ, so it affects me, and I'm not even that group. And so how did you do it? Give us the secret of how you did that.
I mean, it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
That is definitely sure. It's the hardest type of work.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it is the
Yes.
most successful type of work. And now we have, studies looking at conversations we had a decade ago, longer, and we can already see that this is the most effective long-term method for changing people's hearts and minds. It is not their church. It is not a commercial on TV. It's not a plot line on a TV show. It is a face-to-face conversation with someone like that's structured in this way. So it's effective. And so for me, anytime I felt that judgment, or if it was hitting a piece of personal pain, I just thought, what's more important in that moment? My desire to be right, or to prove them wrong, or to one-up them, or to assert power when I felt mostly powerless in my life? Does that matter more than the long-term change that I want and need for my community? And the answer is no. It might feel good in the moment, like scratching a mosquito bite feels good.
Yes.
But it's not actually effective. And I just want to be effective. I just want the world to be better. And I know showing up in my anger and judgment and blame and shame, it's just not effective. So then why would I do it? And so it's just practice, healing, and then being just so deeply in love with a transformed world that I'm willing to fight for that way more than I'm willing to be right or to make someone feel like crap in the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, it totally makes sense. And it's such a beautiful long-term view. And maybe you could say a little bit more, Trystan, about how the storytelling really impacts the consulting, the training, the activism work.
Yeah, absolutely. People our brains just latch on to stories in such a more powerful way than to numbers. I could do a whole training on what percentage of trans people have experienced harassment, bias, discrimination, lost jobs. What's the average life expectancy of a trans person? Sure, that matters. That's important. It's good, especially for the data brains among us. But when I am at a farmer's market and, an employee from Dropbox or whatever sees me and is like, oh my gosh, you did a training for us 6 years ago. Every time I go to the airport, I think about your story about how, as a trans person, you get flagged as quote unquote abnormal when you go through the X-ray machine every single time because they have to select a gender on the control panel. That's the story they remember. It's real. It's tangible. They can imagine being in my shoes and the unfairness of that.
Exactly.
And it's such a stark example of, in the movement, we might say cisgender privilege, but just those little ways that your life is easier compared to a trans person. They can just see it. It's tangible. It's a story. So it's those kinds of things. Those are the things that 6 years later people remember. The empathy, the way into the story, I think matters so much more to people.
Oh my gosh. To your point that if we say you have privilege, people will say, well, no, I don't. They don't get it. But if you say going through the TSA machine and I get flagged every time, now all of a sudden you realize, oh, wow, I do have privilege. So storytelling, we know from a change perspective, is so important, and we love stories. And now one of the stories you already mentioned is about how you grew your family with your partner. So tell us a little bit more about that and why you choose that story and you're so public about that story.
Yeah, I mean, there's really two chapters of the story. I mean, there's like, I don't know, 12 chapters or whatever in my book. But the two main chapters are, my partner and I had been together for a year. And we got a phone call from a social worker that my partner's niece and nephew needed a place to stay that was safe. And if they didn't have that, they were going to be pulled from their home and very possibly separated out and sent into foster care. And we might never see them again, and they might never have that connection to family again. And so we very quickly made the decision to welcome them into our home. We had no idea what we were doing. I'll tell you right now, we did not have any clue. I remember being at one of those little kids' play places. They were 1 and 3. And the eldest, who was 3, he lifted up and his pants fell right down. And one of the moms said, you realize that the buttons and the elastic band inside the pants are so you can adjust the pants, right? How would I have ever known that? I don't know.
Nobody knows what those elastics and buttons are for. There's no instruction. They don't say it when you buy the pants.
I truly had no clue what those were for. So we didn't know what we were doing, but we were, deeply committed to giving them a safe, loving, stable environment. And we ended up getting permanent guardianship of them, and then we adopted them and became their forever family. They're 14 and 17 now. And so yeah, and the second chapter of our family building journey is after the adoption with the older kids was starting to settle down. I approached my partner and, basically asked, do you want to continue to grow our family? And to do so by me actually stopping my testosterone, my hormones, and conceiving and carrying a child that was biologically related to both of us. So that's the second chapter, and he is 7 years old now.
We'll get back to the interview after this quick break. You know those rules you follow every day? The ones about what you should do, who you should be, and how your life should look?
Yeah, we've lived by those too, until we broke out of them. And here's what we know. Those rules, they're not your truth. They're someone else's expectations.
So let's change the story. Come find us at abrachigroup.com. We'll help you build a life that actually fits you. Why is this story so important to you to share with so many people?
Yeah, we initially shared our adoption story. LGBTQ plus people and couples and families are much, much more likely to engage in family building through foster care, through adoption. We are much more likely to take harder to place kids, older kids, kids with disabilities, or other sort of things that might count them out from many people who are prospective adopters. And so we wanted to tell our story. We wanted to make sure that other LGBTQ plus people knew this was an option. That you actually could build a family. And so we just wanted to tell, a nuanced story of two people who tried to show up and give love and support when it was needed. And it is a bit of a counter narrative to how often, particularly gay men, are portrayed by the media.
Yes. I think sometimes people can see you more as a person, not a stat, when they realize, oh, he's just trying to do right by his kids. That's what I'm trying to do too. And so it's that bonding story that you talked about earlier.
Right. And I mean, the vulnerability points are bonding as well.
Yeah.
The pants falling down. I told that story. You were immediately like, OMG, that happened to me too. And all of a sudden, we're not as separate and different as we seem, right?
Exactly. Well, Trystan, thank you so much for joining. Since everyone is okay with the trans community and LGBTQIA, and we have no problems in the world, I guess we'll end the interview now, right?
Yeah, my work here is done.
Your work here is done. Congratulations. Thank you. Yeah, no, not everything is handled. But I know, Kelly, you have a lot of questions for Trystan.
Your story is so inspirational. And I'm wondering, when you're telling these stories and you're finding commonalities of the pants and your desire to have children and to raise a family, as you're having those conversations with people who may at first feel like there's no similarities at all between you and them, what kinds of shifts do you see in their thinking? I'd be curious to see what that feels like for you and what you've seen.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of science around this, that there are developmental stages that people go through on their journey towards acceptance. And so typically, in some cases, I might see someone come in pretty polarized, pretty us and them. And that's what those points of commonality are for, is to get them away from this I'm good, you're bad, black and white thinking, and into a little bit more nuance. Oh, okay, I guess you're not as different from me as I thought. And the more you can get them to see how much we have in common, that, yeah, I'm just like a dude in Portland who just like owns a business and is trying to take care of my family. That's it. I'm not threatening in any way, shape, or form, although I have been going to the gym just in case there's a revolution. So typically I look for those shifts, those moments when they're like, oh, yeah, me too. When I start to see that, I'm like, okay, great. That's a movement. That's a shift. Mm-hmm. And then for people who are a little bit, you can get also a little stuck in the like, oh, we're actually so similar. I'm not interested in hearing the differences. Why does the difference matter? Does it really matter if someone's gay or straight? Why do I have to hear about them being gay or straight? From there, that's where I want to start to layer on or sort of like add some extra nuances. Even though we have so much in common, yes, I'm going to get flagged by the TSA in a way you're not. So that's what those kinds of stories are for. It's starting to layer on some of the systems pieces, some of the like, power privilege, blah, blah, blah language of like, oh, we are more alike than different. And the ways we're different actually really matter. Mm-hmm. And that's how we start to shape allies, because allies start to have an understanding of those differences. Oh my gosh, I'm in HR and, I experience infertility and I could get my insurance to cover it, but a trans person who needs fertility treatment to have a baby doesn't have access to that. That's an injustice that I want to help solve with them. Mm-hmm. That's where we start to see allyship happening. And then I think the very final stage is taking them from that understanding that there's like systems things that we need some help with to really that, I think, radical celebration or acceptance. And the way that I knew that was working is, when I told this second chapter of our family building story, which is as a transgender man, I decided with my partner and my family to get pregnant and give birth to a son biologically myself. And during that period of time when we were telling that story publicly, I got an email from a woman who was also raising her niece and nephew. She's in the Midwest somewhere. And she said in her email that she thought that it was beautiful that my body could create new life while also giving me the life that I deserved. Oh. And that's the end goal, mm-hmm. is that people can get all the way through to that place of like, oh, this is awesome. It's not scary. It's not the same. It's not hard. It's awesome. These possibilities, the way that queer people have found a way to be free, no offense, but y'all should be looking up to us. You should be asking what we can teach you because we're free in ways that many people who are not like us could never imagine. And we want to teach you. And so those are some of the things that I see that help me know where someone is and help me know that I've had a breakthrough moment with them and they're ready for the next thing.
I have chills. That's so powerful. And, credit to you for being so passionate about really advocating for your community, advocating for your family, and advocating for people in general to better understand and gain awareness that we are not as different as it may appear. I wonder, as the work in DEI, unfortunately, has taken an absolute huge impact for the negative. What are you seeing right now, Trystan?
Yeah, I have my own micro experience as a facilitator, a trainer, a coach who's been doing this work for many years. Not only has there been a huge backing off of anything related to belonging or inclusion, and that literally means contracts canceled. It literally means everyone I knew at that federal agency is gone, right? And so it's tangible, it's clear, it's specific. And then I think the second level that I'm seeing is, I diversified my work many years ago. I don't just teach about trans issues, although I do that and I love that. But also, I have a huge slate of offerings around neurodiversity. I'm a neurodivergent person myself. I can do all of the Brene Brown Dare to Lead work. I'm a certified Dare to Lead facilitator. None of that matters. What I'm seeing is an overall pulling back either from any of that work about how people can be in better relationship with each other in the workplace, or people are still open to that work and they're very wary of engaging a trans person to do it because of the perception of how that might look, of how they might be targeted. And I understand it's their job to protect their businesses, and as someone who has been doing this work for many years, and I like to believe I do it at a very high level of excellence, it is really challenging to figure out, how do I pivot in this moment when I can't ever not be trans? You know what I mean? Like, that's
Right.
not something I could ever change about myself. It's just not possible, nor would I want to, or could I, So figuring out in this moment what to do, what am I called to do? How can I be of service when there's a little bit of a scarlet letter kind of a situation happening with me and other trans folks? It's a challenge that I haven't quite figured out the pathway through.
Not only is it difficult to get up every day and do the work you're doing, but then to see the progress and to see it regress, that is so disheartening, because you fought for it, you got it, and then you lose it. And to pretend that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging isn't important, that it doesn't help companies, which, by the way, all the research is, the more diverse you are, the more you make money. So come on now. But to keep getting blasted and that it's not important and that you're woke because you actually care about someone who doesn't look like you or doesn't act like you is just depressing.
Well, what gives me hope is that there are companies who do believe in DEI, and there are people who are making conscious choices not to invest in companies that are not interested in bowing down to a dictator just because he's ignorant and biased and a fucking idiot. So, for lack of a better word.
No, that's a perfect word.
I mean,
Short and to the point.
right. So to me, these companies are like the Trystans of the world who are trying to
Yes.
stand up to an opposing regime and saying, you know what, we have beliefs, we're going to make people's lives better, and we're going to show you that we're going to come out on top. And so to the Costco's out there who are willing to invest and continue to do that, I'll always support you. To the Targets who are starting to see their profits dwindle, well, you made a choice and now there are consequences. Plus, there's so many generations who are looking at, what is your sustainability? What do you believe in? What do you stand for? And I have to believe that that group of people is going to pull us through and see us to a brighter day.
Mic drop on that one, Kelly Gunther.
And I'm sorry you've seen friends and allies that are, unfortunately taken a negative impact in many, many ways. It's painful to watch and be part of. So what can we do about it? How are you telling people how to approach conversations like this?
To be honest, what I tell people to do is, number one, get super clear about where your zone of influence is. It may not be the case that you're a federal judge who could impact policy at the federal level, but you might be an HR director who says, what can I do here? There are so many. I'm helping a whole organization right now audit all of their policies, practices, procedures, their benefits, everything through this lens. Because they're like, we can't do a lot of public work right now. We can't have you do another pronoun training. It's like, it's too hot, but we still want to work with you. We want to support you. We want to make things better for our employees. What can we do? Right? And so like anyone in HR, you could do that. Anyone who leads an LGBT employee resource group or a parents resource group, like wherever you have impact. And for some people, honestly, it might be your family. And guess what? We need parents talking to their kids about different kinds of families and different kinds of kids at school. That's how my kids don't get bullied, is those parents at home are talking to them about all different kinds of families. No change that someone is able to engage in is too small. It really isn't. If what you can do is talk to your neighbors, for God's sakes, please talk to your neighbors, And then for people who do have a big reach, really thinking, being thoughtful and intentional about what do you want to do with your platform, with your power, and hopefully aligning that with what are you best at doing, your zone of genius. Like what are you really good at doing? If you're like a policy wonk, don't try to go and do a bunch of storytelling. Do the policy stuff. That's what we need. Don't yell at people on Twitter. It doesn't do anything. Yeah. And then just remember that developmental approach, that there are always going to be some people who are so far away that there's not a lot of reason for you to spend a lot of time investing in them. There are so many people, though, who are like, I don't understand, but I want to. Great. Those are your people. I understand, but I don't know what to do. Great. Those are your people. I know what to do, but I need some direction. Great. There's so many people in those middle stages that would love to be put to work or who would love to be educated more. That's really where the energy should be focused.
Mm. It's like protecting your peace a little bit. Like, what is it that I really want to put my effort and my thought and focus into that's going to make me feel like I'm actually making a difference? What do you find hopeful about the moment that we're in right now?
What do I find hopeful about the moment we're in right now? I think for the first time in trans history, trans folks have access to brilliant, thoughtful, revolutionary leaders that we can just watch a video. We could DM them on social media. Those types of leaders have always existed in the trans community, but we've never been able to pull up Instagram and watch the first trans person to argue in front of the Supreme Court, telling you how to not lose hope after this horrible ruling that happened yesterday. That's just never existed before. I couldn't open a podcast app and listen to Laverne Cox preaching about our transcestors and how we're still as beautiful and brilliant as ever, despite what other people think of us. That's just never existed before. And so I think the fact that, we have trans comedians like making jokes about what's happening right now and people telling us where to focus our energy, I think that's the thing that's giving me hope, is other trans people who are finding ways to be the rose coming up from concrete to pull from a Tupac lyric. We're able to have that now in a way we just didn't have access to in the past. And that's pretty great.
Accessibility for sure. Last question for you, Trystan. If you have 1 minute with someone who feels stuck, they want to break out, what would you tell them?
I think, I remember when I was 11, and I was told by my 6th grade biology teacher that I was going to fail the class because I refused to dissect a frog. It was against my beliefs. And he doubled down, so I doubled down. And I organized a walkout of the school. And eventually the superintendent came to the school and asked me to please call off the news cameras that I had called to my student protest. And I said, if you change the curriculum. And he said, okay. And in my tiny Air Force town at 11 years old, I got the curriculum changed. So I think no matter who you are, no matter where you're starting from, no matter how small you think your voice is, do not let them tell you that you are not powerful, because you are.
That's 6th grade?
11 years old, I could see.
11 years old. So powerful. And it just shows how the power of believing in yourself and standing for what's right and standing for what is good, how much it can impact someone else's life and change things.
And I couldn't have done that without my parents, who supported me all the way. They were like, yes, you're right. This is not just. And what do you want to do? And I said, I might get in trouble. They were like, you can get in trouble. That will be okay with us. You will not get in trouble with us. And that's another reminder to the parents of how important it is that our kids know we've got their backs.
Trystan, thank you so much for sharing your story. We'll put a link to the services you offer, your book. We'll put all of that into our show notes. And again, thank you so much for fighting the good fight and helping educate our guests and myself.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight.
That was bridge building powerhouse Trystan Reese, and this is The Breakout. If you love the show, do us a favor. Follow, rate, review. All the podcast things.
Or better yet, share an episode with someone who needs a nudge. It helps The Breakout grow, and it just might help your friend too. I'm Kelly Gunther.
And I'm Dr. Carrie Ulrich. Thank you so much for listening. See you soon.
We want to hear about your breakout story. When did you push back, speak up, or take a step that felt terrifying?
Record a short voice note, 30 seconds or less, telling us what you did and why it mattered. Send it to us at hello@abracigroup.com. That's hello@abracigroup, ABBRACCIGROUP.com. We can't wait to share your story on the podcast.